Welcome to episode 6 of Ghostcasters Podcast. Adam, we've made it to 6. So far, so good. Hadn't had any issues that I know of. I have noticed, like I said at the end of the last episode, we're starting to pick up some listeners in different parts of the country. I haven't told you this, but we picked up a listener in the North Pole, Alaska. I didn't even know
Awesome.
the North Pole was in Alaska.
Was his name Nicholas?
Well, it doesn't give me the damn name, Adam. But it was North Pole, Alaska. There was one listener. So whoever you are, I don't know if you're an Eskimo or if you're Santa Claus, but we appreciate it. How was your week, Adam? Anything interesting happen?
Nah, just been busy, man. Trying to make sure. Me and you, when we were younger, we watched this movie called Black Dog, and it had this
I remember
phenomenon
that.
where people that get so tired at night would see animals run across the road. And
No, it was
try-
specifically a black dog.
Well, okay, well, excuse me. A black dog would run across the road, and they'd try to dodge it from hitting it and everything. And I've been up and down the road a bunch this week, so I've been trying to avoid that black dog.
Yeah, that was a damn movie. And it had.
But you did see that black dog that night coming back from
We
inventory,
did.
so
We did. We did inventory at a store that will go unnamed one night. It was very late, and I thought we saw a damn black dog. However, that was shortly after we saw that movie, so we were probably influenced a little bit, or at least I was. But yeah, Randy Travis, Patrick Swayze, Meatloaf. Very interesting cast for the movie Black Dog.
one survivor.
Yeah, God, and he's not doing so good. But hey, I mean, at least we're not talking about him like we were Coolio last week. Randy's he's hanging in there. All right, so any ghost news you've heard of this week, Adam?
Yeah, I had an interesting story sent to me from Celebritainment. It was about Jack and Kelly Osbournes. I don't know if anybody remembers the Osbournes from the early 2000s. Very popular
Lord.
Ozzy, one of the all-time rock gods out there. His family became very famous during the show that they had back in the early 2000s.
It was a reality show, yeah.
Yeah, just showed him life. It's like, Sharon, where's my popcorn? I can't remember what he said. I just remember him yelling at Sharon.
I
all
don't
the
remember.
time.
I don't think anybody can understand what the hell he was saying.
Still can't, probably. You know, Ozzy Osbourne used to scare me because my mom told me one story about somebody threw a bat on stage and he took and bit its head off.
He did.
Yeah, but you know, the story goes he thought it was like a toy, so he didn't actually think it was a real bat, and it happened to be a real bat. But anyway, the Osbournes told a story about how they had to hide under their beds to escape from ghosts. They grew up in a grade 2 listed building, which was previously a hospital for the mentally ill. They were left home alone, and they were off from school sick one day, and they found themselves terrified by the sounds going on in the building. He said he was watching, or he says we were watching, I guess him and his sister, TV in their parents' bedroom, and the floorboards started making a very distinct sound, and we heard someone walking very heavy-footed. The footsteps were walking towards the room, and Kelly and I, or whatever we were making, those footsteps was rattling the cupboard doors along the corridor. We were so convinced the footsteps were coming from us, we opened the window and thought about jumping. Instead, we hid under the bed. So Jack is doing some stuff now for a Discovery Plus show, so this is kind of why they're talking about it. He didn't know what it was. The house was built in 1889 by Mervyn McCartney for his father-in-law Charles Thomas Ritchie. It was sold and used for a home for convalescents with women who had mild nervous maladies between 1911 and 1916. So this house probably had an extensive history, people that had mental illnesses and stuff like this. He says he understands that people would be skeptical of his claims. However, a friend he's known since childhood has no explanation for his own house, for the own experiences that he had at his house. So he thinks what he did. Jack said he thinks what I did was a joke, but he had his own experience. He and his wife were staying at Welders, and was at the house there he's talking about and heard a piano playing and a woman singing, but nobody was there. They share what they heard with each other, and two independent witnesses both hearing the same thing. So he's doing some of this now, for this new show, this Discovery Plus show. But like I said, he did tell the story about the house that him and his sister grew up in. So,
well, it's interesting that you bring him up or the Osbournes up tonight, because when I was doing a little bit of research for our topic tonight, they covered this. Jack Osbourne was part of the team that kind of investigated it. And I watched a video where, and I've always heard, I think they've always had this, they haven't made a secret that they believe in the paranormal and that sort of thing, which is, I guess, is why Jack is involved in this new show that he's in. But yeah, that was an interesting story. I thought it was, I thought it was particularly interesting that you said that they considered actually jumping out the window. I don't. That ghost would have to be pretty bad to make me jump out the window. But I guess if I've never been in that position, so not judging you there, Jack. There's one other story that I saw. There's apparently a show. I've never heard of this show. My wife loves HGTV. She loves all those damn building shows, fixer-upper shows. And there's one on there apparently called Farmhouse Fixer. Have you heard of this one?
I have not.
Well, they've apparently got a damn fixer-upper show for everything. And farmhouses are I guess, the newest thing. Yeah, that's the newest thing. I guess they've added a show on this. But anyway, on this particular show the other day that aired, they were going to do a renovation for a 1600s New England home. Now, this house, interesting enough, was close to Salem, the area where everybody's heard of the Salem witch trials and all the stuff about witchcraft and all the terrible things that happened back then, women getting burned at the stake that weren't even really witches and so forth. But anyway, they even mentioned it during the show. The host, Jonathan Knight, and the co-host, Christina Creston, they kind of talked about it a little bit, the Salem witch trials that occurred. They said that someone actually that lived in the house was accused of being a witch and ended up getting hung. This was, that house belonged to that person. So anyway,
I got something to say. Was the person hanging tough?
Hanging tough?
Yes, Jonathan Knight.
Jonathan Knight. Oh, my God.
New Kids in the Block.
Yeah, there's a lot of damn people that's not going to know what the hell you were talking about. Hell, it took me a second. Jonathan and Jordan Knight were brothers on in New Kids on the Block. But anyway, as viewers watch the show, and there's an image of it in the article that I was reading, where somebody posted a screenshot, but there's a shot of the outside of the house, and in one of the upstairs windows, there's obviously the image of a woman standing there. At least that's what it appears to be. It could be some weird reflection on the glass, I guess, but it looks like a woman standing there with long black hair and I don't know, a white dress or something. So people noticed it when they were watching the show. Everybody started talking about it on Twitter and other social media, and now it's this big story that did they catch a ghost on camera when they were filming this episode? So if you hadn't seen that, check it out. You just Google Farmhouse Fixer Ghost or something, it'll pop right up. So two kind of interesting stories on the ghost front this week that we could talk about. As far as tonight's topic goes, we're going to kind of transition into that now. We're going to be talking about Hotel Monte Vista. This is an old vintage hotel off historic Route 66 in the city of Flagstaff, Arizona. 73 rooms are in this hotel. There's suites on 3 floors. There's a lounge in the bottom of this place. It's known as the Monte Vista Lounge, or Monte V for short. It's apparently a pretty popular bar and an entertainment venue there in Flagstaff. This hotel has a very distinctive, large, vintage-looking neon sign on the roof that I thought was kind of cool looking. You can't miss this place if you're in Flagstaff, Arizona. If for nothing else, that sign is very unique, and it is definitely a callback to the history of that place when you look at that sign. Have you seen any pictures of it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, it's just an interesting building, and of course, this is an old building, and every case we've looked at so far, that's always kind of the common denominator is most of these places are older buildings or older homes. You have all this history, and especially when you're looking at something like a hotel where there are so many people that stay in that hotel, there's a lot of history there, which I think is kind of a good segue for you now. What did you dig up on the history of this place?
All right, so the hotel, Arizona, after the Civil War, started to grow real fast. Back in the 1920s, after World War I, tourism was on the rise, and all the residents in Flagstaff agreed they needed a hotel to provide first-class accommodations. There were hotels in the town, but at the time they were all outdated. Fundraising began in April of 1926. Within only a month, donation by prominent citizens as well as funds donated by novelist Zane Grey led to the beginning of the foundation work on June 8th of that year, so 1926.
Yeah.
By New Year's Day, so just a few 6 months later, the hotel was open for business. It was originally called the Community Hotel as a way to honor all the townspeople who contributed to its existence. However, the Monte Vista was what it became known later thanks to a choice made by a 12-year-old contest winner. Monte Vista means mountain view. In 1929, Mary Costigan moved the KFXY radio station to the Monte Vista Hotel. Probably because even though it's only 3 stories, it is a rather large building. I don't know quite how to describe it to you. It's almost like it takes up a whole city block. It's not the hotels that we think of today that are like big sky rises or little 3-story, like curved buildings or whatever, or self-contained little hotels. It's a big, like almost a square type of building. She was the second woman in the world and the first United States that was granted a radio broadcasting license. More than 400 residents showed up for the maiden broadcast of her show. There are a network of tunnels that snake their way through downtown Flagstaff. Many of the businesses are connected to each other through these tunnels, which, I don't know what people know about histories of tunnels under towns and stuff like that, but like the catacombs in Paris and stuff like that. Lots of histories with those tunnels and things happening in them and stuff like that. The Monte Vista was included. The tunnels were believed to be built by Chinese immigrants. Apparently, in the early 1900s, a large fire damaged many buildings in downtown Flagstaff. So once again, these fires spread to these buildings, kind of like we talked with our previous hotel. Fire.
Andrew Jackson.
Yeah. One of the big things with all this is, these buildings, they were made of the materials ahead of time. So most of them were made out of brick, but they had wooden framing, different things like that in terms of how the house inside of it. So almost like a tinderbox almost once a flame would get to it. The Chinese migrant workers were blamed because they said that their cooking and cleaning practices were what led to the fire. After that fire, the Chinese used the tunnels to make their way around town without being harassed. Some tunnels are now used for piping and storage, but some of the larger areas have a darker purpose. They said they were used as opium dens, moonshine distilleries, and gambling machines have all been found hidden away in Flagstaff's underworld. In 1931,
hang on, damn it! I want to talk about this fire. So it was their cooking practices.
Yeah.
Was that they had a damn hibachi grill? That's Japanese, isn't it? Is hibachi Chinese or Japanese?
Hibachi is Chinese or Japanese.
Okay. Well, did you just ask being racist? Damn, if it's Japanese.
Yeah, that did accuse you of being racist.
Japanese, Chinese. It sounded like they. I was just wondering what these cooking practices were that caused the fire.
So you know what a wok is, right?
Not really. What is that?
Okay. It's a big, what we here in the South we call it like a big frying pan, but it's not just shallow like a frying pan. It's much deeper. and they usually cooked in it, and they would cook over like an open flame. So if you had a big wok, and it's almost like a propane burner or Bunsen burner, I don't know what everybody else would call it, but it's an open flame from a single source. So there would be multiple flames surrounding the bottom of it. So a lot of times with those woks, if you've ever seen those people cook with it, and I say those people, and I mean cook chefs,
You
when they
damn
cook
racist.
with a wok, if they cook with the woks, they take them and like shake the food and like throw it up in the air and catch it. Sometimes that food would, fly out of the pan, maybe catch through the flame as it was going back down to the ground. Maybe something fall over into the open flame, catch on fire. So I think that's what they meant by their cooking practices.
Well,
is
that
they
sucks.
used
And it sucks
a lot
that
of open flame.
those people in that town harassed them to the point that they had to use tunnels. Clearly, they've never eaten at a Chinese buffet because that shit's good. And
Yeah.
if they maybe ate some of their food, maybe they'd be a little nicer to them. But anyway,
it probably wasn't the taste of the food that prevented them from disliking it. It's probably just a general racism in general. Most people at this time, the Chinese immigrants, the big things that you usually hear about them were building the railroads across America. That was a lot of Chinese labor, and a lot of people look down on those. A lot of things today, we see so much racism dealing with black and white, but there's always been a racist history to America in terms of Chinese, Irish, different people coming here not being readily accepted.
you took that literally. I was kind of joking about they're eating the damn food, Adam. Good God, you took it to heart.
Well, I mean but that's what people did, is that they blamed them for it because they were an easy person to blame. I mean, they were the ones living in the tunnels at this time, and they did have those cooking practices there.
Yeah,
and
well,
people just say, it's easy.
I think they just didn't eat their damn food. If they'd ate some of that Chinese food, maybe they would have had a different opinion. That's just what I choose to believe, Adam. But anyway,
Okay, well,
it is also interesting.
Keep on believing.
It is interesting that in those tunnels there were moonshine distilleries and gambling machines.
Gambling.
That's pretty freaking cool.
Opium dens, man. It was a free for all down there.
It sounded like it was a cool damn place to hang out. Is what it sounds like to me. But
yeah.
I assume those tunnels are probably still there today. If we ever find ourselves in Flagstaff, Arizona, we've got to ask about these tunnels.
They said they're still there, but they're used mainly now for piping and not irrigation. What's the word I'm looking for? Where you divert water from runoff and from the streets and stuff like that.
Like drainage.
Well, drainage.
Okay.
There you go. In 1931, the lounge was raided by local authorities and shut down due to the profitable bootlegging operation that was run out of the hotel.
Of course.
And only 2 more years, prohibition ended and the business resumed right where it left off. In the 1930s, a light was installed on top of the building to serve as an emergency signal for the city. If the light was flashing, it would alert local authorities and citizens of hazards and catastrophes.
Catastrophes, man.
Catastrophes, I'm sorry. In and around the town. My mouth's getting dry.
Well, drink some damn water.
Well, I don't have any right now. Give me a second, I'll get some. Also in the 1930s, they would use this. The hotel lodged many famous personalities, from Harry Truman, who was a president, Bob Hope, Michael Stipe of R.E.M., Freddie Mercury, Bon Jovi, Gary Cooper, Jane Russell, Spencer Tracy, John Wayne, Bing Crosby, and Michael J. Fox. So a lot of different people stayed at this hotel.
Wow.
A lot of the rooms in the hotel actually have signage on the door to indicate which celebrities have stayed there previously. Many westerns were filmed in the nearby Sedona and Oak Creek Canyon. The hotel hosted many of the famous actors of that time. The hotel has been used by Hollywood as a set piece, most notably in the films Casablanca and Forrest Gump. And one thing I wanted to mention, you talked about the sign. When we grew up in the town that we grew up in, or at the neighboring city, I should say, one of the big things I remember is that we used to have a hotel that was right beside the interstate, and it used to have a large swimming lady beside it.
Yeah.
And these hotels would use these big signs, these big neon signs we were talking about earlier, and they would use them to draw in customers from outside. So that's part of the reason they have such a big neon sign on it and things like that, trying to do that. But if you look at pictures of it, it's pretty obvious that they were trying to draw people into the facility.
Yeah, I remember the sign you're talking about. I think it was like a woman diving, and I think that was to kind of tell people, hey, we've got a freaking swimming pool here at this hotel.
That's
But
right.
anyway, you're right. I mean, the neon sign, I mean, it definitely served a purpose back then. So I guess that's the majority of, or pretty much everything on the history.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
it pretty much covers the history there up till, I mean, talking about the Forrest Gump, most of this stuff that we're going to talk about in terms of the hauntings and stuff have been in the past. I mean, it's happened throughout the time, but
so there's some, there are some interesting ghosts in this place. A few of them haunt specific rooms. Some of them just haunt the various parts of the hotel or just the hotel in general. So we'll cover each one because there are quite a few here. The first one that I want to talk about in room 220, they say that one is haunted by the meat man. Now this is some weird crap. Okay, there apparently there was a long-term boarding guy, or I guess he pretty much lived at the hotel. Gentleman lived at the hotel. He had been there a long time, and for whatever reason, he had this unusual habit of hanging raw meat from the chandelier. Have you ever heard of that, Adam? Is there a particular
no,
reason
I've
why?
never heard of anybody hanging raw meat from a chandelier. Now, I've heard of hanging raw meat to let it age, but not usually from the chandelier.
You think
As
maybe that's what he was doing? Was trying to
I mean,
age the meat?
I would assume. Why else would you hang your meat? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of weird. You hang your meat up from the chandelier.
the chandelier.
As a damn decoration or something. I don't know. That's very
Maybe
very...
he's related to Sia. See if anybody catches on to that joke.
Oh yeah. I know the song. My daughter sings that song all the time. So in the early 1980s, Meat Man, he died. They found him dead in his room. Apparently, he'd been there for a few days before even being discovered. So, as you can imagine, a person who has a habit of hanging their meat up from the chandelier is probably not the cleanest person, and that chandelier specifically is probably not the cleanest light fixture in the house. So before they were going to rent this room out again, they decided they would change the chandelier out, get rid of that fixture, have it replaced. So a maintenance man went in, took the old one down, and he was going to leave to go purchase a new replacement fixture. Now, when he left this room, he didn't leave any lights on. He didn't leave anything on. There was no one in the room when he left, and he locked the door behind him. So he went to the store. He gets the replacement chandelier. He comes back to the hotel room, opens the door, and when he returned and opens his door, all the lights are suddenly on. The television is on, and the volume is turned all the way up. The linens from the bed had been pulled off and were scattered throughout the room. So that would be pretty creepy. People that stay in that room today still report that the television, which I'm sure there have been different ones through the years that have been put in there, but even now, people still say that television sort of has a mind of its own. The channels change, it turns off and on its own, and people even say at night sometimes when they're asleep, they will be awakened by, they'll feel cold, what they describe as male hands touching them in their sleep. Now that's weird. I wonder if he had washed his hands before he died, or if he still had, raw meat on his hands. What a freaking weirdo, man. That is by far the weirdest one I think that we're going to talk about. So that was room 220. Now in room 305, this is the room that I mentioned earlier when I said Jack Osborne and his group came to this hotel. They did they spent a lot of time in room 305. Room 305 in the Monte Vista Hotel is considered the most active room in the entire building. Numerous guests have reported seeing a woman in a rocking chair near the window. And it's not just the guests that's seen her. Housekeeping, maintenance people in the building have claimed to see this woman. Sometimes people just see the rocking chair moving by itself. And also, even more unsettling is that, the closet, there's a nearby closet, the door is shut, and people can hear knocking noises coming from inside the closet. Someone goes over, opens the door, and there's nothing there. So that's pretty creepy as well. Now,
come out of the closet.
I know, right? You're going back to the South Park episode, aren't you?
No, R. Kelly song, but yeah, it's based on the same thing.
Yeah. I bet R. Kelly would make one hell of a ghost when he dies. Now that you bring him up. But anyway, moving on. So people said that there used to be an elderly woman that actually stayed in that room, and she spent a lot of time sitting at the window. And she would constantly stare out the window, sitting in that rocking chair for hours on end. Nobody seems to know or remember exactly why she did. Some people said that maybe she was watching or looking for something out the window. Maybe she was waiting on someone to return. Maybe she was waiting for her eventual death to come get her. I don't know. But her ghostly apparition is spotted in this room, as I said earlier, in the rocking chair. But she's also been spotted in a mirror in the room as well. So if you really want to try and see a ghost and you want to do it at the Monte Vista Hotel, room 305 is probably your best bet. All right, so room 306. Now this one's a little interesting as well. Back in the early 1940s, Flagstaff's red light district was only 2 blocks away from the Monte Vista Hotel, just past the railroad. Of course, it was across the railroad tracks. As you can imagine, occasionally there were probably prostitutes brought into this building. And one particular night back in the 1940s, a couple prostitutes were brought into room 306. Now, whoever their client was, I don't think his intentions was just to have a good time with these 2 gals. He ultimately decided to kill them. And he threw both of them from the 3rd story balcony, or maybe it was a window. I think it's 3rd story window. But he threw them out the window, and of course they plunged to their deaths on the cold streets below that night. Now, many guests that have stayed in room 306 since then, they feel like somebody's watching them in some instances when they're in the room, and it's usually male guests, but male guests report that they've had a feeling of hands placed around their mouths or around their throats, like something is trying to restrict their breathing when they've been in the room, or sometimes they wake up and they can feel hands around their throat. So I guess that's these 2 gals are still pissed off, and they're just going to take it out on every man that comes in the room, I guess. So look, if you're into some freaky stuff and you want to experience something with a ghost, room 306 is your best bet. Go there and spend the night. Now, another one, and this one is pretty active as well. As a matter of fact, John Wayne himself had an experience with this ghost I'm about to talk about. So there's a phantom bellboy that hangs out all over the hotel. So this is a very common occurrence. A lot of times guests will be in their room. They'll hear a knock at the door, and then they'll hear a muffled voice on the other side of the door announcing a room service from outside in the hallway. So then they walk over, they open the door, and no one's there. Some guests occasionally, I wouldn't even say occasionally, it's probably more frequent, They see the bellboy standing outside of room 210 for some reason. For whatever reason, he hangs out a lot around room 210. As I said earlier, John Wayne experienced this at multiple stays at his hotel, so it happened more than once. Um, he never felt fear from the ghost. He was quoted as saying it was, it seemed very friendly to him, and he never felt threatened by its presence. Now, hotel housekeepers, they and maintenance people also, of course, like many of the other ghosts, they frequently see this bellboy roaming around the hotel. They report that he wanders the halls dressed in the old-fashioned red coat with brass buttons. So you stay over there.
Hey,
You might go ahead.
just a quick point there. I want to say that this was Ghostbusters 2. The Slimer was dressed up as a bellboy, wasn't there? Was it Ghostbusters 1? I can't remember. One of them have where he's dressed up in a bellboy suit.
I do not remember this, but I'm sure you're correct. I don't think it's. I've seen
And
the
maybe
first.
from the cartoon, so.
Oh my God, Adam. Now,
Hey,
that's
we're
way
the children of the 80s, Chris, so.
that's way different than the movies. But what you're describing sounds vaguely familiar. If I had to guess, I'd say that was probably the second one. I've seen the first one quite a bit. I really don't remember that in the first one. So, there's another one in the basement. There often people not in the basement, but sometimes walking around the first floor, they start hearing a baby crying, and it sounds like it's coming from the basement. So usually someone from maintenance or someone from housekeeping hears it, and they'll run down to the basement, and there's nothing there, and the sound continues, and no matter where they go, they can't seem to escape this sound. It just kind of follows them around. It's just a consistent sound of a baby crying. There doesn't seem to be any explanation or any kind of history that anyone knows of that would explain this particular phenomenon with the baby. So in the cocktail lounge, or what I mentioned earlier, the Monte Vista Lounge, people occasionally will see two full-bodied apparitions of a couple dancing in formal attire, laughing, smiling, but they're always doing the same thing. They're dancing. Again, nobody really knows the history of these two. I'm sure at one point these two probably stayed in this hotel and probably enjoyed a night of dancing in there, and they've just continued to do it eternally. But people see that occasionally in the lounge. Now, the final ghost that I'm going to talk about out of all of these is in 1970, 3 men robbed a nearby bank. One of the robbers was shot by a guard during the heist, and even though one of them was injured, the robbers decided to stop by the Monte Vista Lounge to have a drink to celebrate, which I think is a little odd if you just robbed a bank and your first thought is, hey, let's stop in a very public place and have a drink with our friend who's bleeding to death. But that's what they decided to do. Unfortunately, the wounded man, he did eventually bleed to death right there in the bar as he had his last drink. Now, patrons today that come in this bar, they occasionally hear the disembodied voice call out, "Good morning." They think that's this robber. He's very friendly. People say that the bar stools move around, drinks move around on their own, but I guess because this bank robber died in this lounge, people have connected this particular specter to him, and they believe it's his ghost still hanging out in the bar. So that's all I have on the ghosts. Again, I think it's some out of the ones we've covered so far. I think these are some pretty interesting ghosts, and who knows, a lot of those people that you mentioned that stayed in this hotel in the past, a lot of those celebrity names you mentioned, who knows, maybe some of those people one day, those, especially some of them that haven't passed on yet, maybe one of those will pop up and haunt the hotel one day. Who knows? What else do you have on Monte Vista Hotel?
Well, the other thing we do have some reviews there from people that have stayed there. we have a review
Hotel
from
reviews.
a hotel reviews from
Yeah.
I think this is TripAdvisor. Um, this is I think the name is Frisco. His guy said he stayed there in mid-August of 2011. He says he describes it as what an experience, and his title of his review is yes, it is haunted. He stayed in the Gary Cooper room. Picture two middle-aged best gal pals and one 10-year-old boy fighting over who does get to be in the middle.
So this isn't a he. This is a Frisco's a woman.
Maybe so.
Well, it says two middle-aged best gal pals.
And a 10-year-old boy fighting over who does get to be in the middle of one huge bed. So I don't know if this,
well, maybe Frisco's the 10-year-old.
I think he's using it as literary. What's the term where you use it?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, maybe so.
Okay. Anyway, so events included they heard were hearing footsteps coming towards us in the hallway. No one was there. His bag got materially zipped back after he just left it unzipped. He saw orbs of lights hover and then zoom out of the windows about 3:30 in the morning. I would be interested in learning for sure which window and what time the lady of the evening got pushed out of one of those windows long ago. I understand that this is the second most haunted room they have. Hotels, something you can easily imagine many movie stars from back in the day stayed at. Rooms are all named after them too, and they say it's $140 a night for one of the most unique experiences I've had in a long time. If you're adventurous, go for it. So Frisco's saying if you like to be haunted, go to these rooms and do it. Another one there from Google was a pretty neat experience, and this is from Gerald McNamara. I can honestly tell you that while I was sleeping in the room 308, I heard a sound when I was asleep, and the experience of a brown-haired lady hovering over me and screamed at me in a way that went through my entire body like a screech. It was crazy. So I'm a believer this hotel is haunted.
A brown-haired lady.
Yeah.
Hovered
And that
over
wasn't
him.
anything that we particularly mentioned, but, like I said, there were lots of different people there. Brown haired. It could be, you would think most Chinese people would be black haired for the most part, but brown hair could possibly be a hair color they have as well. So it could have been some of those people.
You think it's one of those Chinese immigrants that got pissed off for burning the damn city down?
Yeah, because it said that, she was hovering over him, screamed in a way that went through my entire body like a screech. Not probably Screech from Saved by the Bell.
Hey,
that's
another
way.
His ghost might pop up. He's no longer
right.
among the living.
You probably don't want him to go through your body the way that he went through bodies. So.
No, probably not. I don't want to think about that. Gerald, by the way, that review was only a week ago, so that one is really fresh. So hauntings apparently still go on to this day in the Hotel Monte Vista. So that's really all we have on this one, Adam. Do you have anything to add before we get to our usual ratings?
Nah, just an interesting place. I'd really never heard of it before you proposed it as a location this week. And so it was interesting to hear about it and stuff like that. And interesting to see like all the famous people that stayed there. We think today people come to our biggest city we have in our state, which is Jackson. There's a couple of like Marriott's and Hilton's downtown, and what's the other big King Edward? Those type of hotels. King Edward would have been the one back in the 30s and 40s when these people were popular that they would have stayed at. So, it's just interesting thinking about this because if you saw this today, your first thought wouldn't be that's a hotel besides having that huge sign on the top of the building.
And the King Edward has a large vintage sign like that on top of it as well. I didn't think about that, but it does. A lot of those, I guess that was a common thing with those older hotels.
It's a way to get people to come stay at them.
Yeah, I guess so.
They didn't have Google Maps back in the day, so you had to find another way to find a place to stay.
That is true. So, all right. So, just to remind everybody, our rating scale is as follows. 5 means we fully believe. 4, there's not enough reasonable doubt. 3, we just don't have enough intel to make a good judgment call. 2, there is reasonable doubt. And 1, we don't believe it at all. So, Adam, after everything you've heard, what do you give this one?
I'm going to give this one a 4. Not enough reasonable doubt. I think there's enough to say that this place is probably haunted and that it has stuff, but like I said, I'm very, very on the side of it's almost going to take my own experience with a ghost to say 5. So I would say this one's 4. I do believe this place is haunted, and I do believe if I was to go there, I'd probably see some type of apparition or something like along those lines.
All right, so I watched a lot of videos of people investigating this hotel. Different people, some of them weren't even really what I would call paranormal investigators. It was just people staying there and decided they would record things and see if anything happened. And I got to tell you, I didn't really see a whole lot from people trying to catch things. Now, there was one video that covered, what did I say it was? Room 305, the one with a rocking chair in it. There was one video that I saw where these people were in there and they were trying to talk to whoever the specter in that room was. And all of these appear to be class 4 specters. I mean, all of them or most of them are full-bodied apparitions. I think there were a couple that would maybe be a class 3, like the baby. There's never been an apparition spotted with the baby, and then the bank robber. No one's actually seen him. Those are probably more class 3s, but nothing above a class 4 here. But in this particular room 305 on this investigation or whatever you want to call it, the rocking chair did move, and it did move suddenly. As a matter of fact, it spun almost all the way around. But, and this is just my opinion, I could be completely wrong, it didn't look real to me. It looked like it could have been, it looked like a hoax to me. That's not to say that the room is not haunted. It's just the particular video that I saw was not convincing enough for me. So I'm like you. I don't fully believe this one, but I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that it's quite possible that it is. There's just not enough reasonable doubt, so I'm going to give it a 4. So the average of our scores together are, of course, a 4. So I think that if you're out on the West Coast or around Arizona and you're interested in this sort of thing, the Monte Vista Hotel would probably be a good one to visit. And if you've stayed there and you've had some sort of experience for your own, let us know about it. You can email us at theghostcasters@gmail.com. And you can also find us on Instagram at theghostcasters. And also on our Instagram, we try to post a few pictures and things of each haunting that we talk about, some kind of picture associated with it. Again, as I've said before, we're very early in this podcast. Obviously, we'd like to build an audience, and the more people we get, the more content and more stuff we can put on our Instagram page, I suppose. So, as I've asked before, if you like this show or if you want to hear more, please by all means give us a rating, give us a review. That's very important to anyone that does podcasting. We need those reviews. We need those ratings. But anyway, I guess that's all we have on the Monte Vista Hotel, Adam. Any closing thoughts this week?
No, none that I have right now. Just, if you got the right stuff, going back to the beginning to the New Kids on the Block, their puns, if you got the right stuff, reach out to us and let us know how we're doing, and we'd be happy to discuss with you any of the things. If you've got something you think would be interested for us to check into,
I'm not ashamed to say, and this is honest to God true. I'd put my hand on the Bible and tell you this is the truth. I was singing New Kids on the Block in the shower last night. I straight up did. I
It's
really
rough.
did. I know that my wife really liked them when she was a kid, So
Jennifer went and saw him. My wife went and saw him.
If I'm in the shower and she comes in there, just to screw with her, I'll start singing some New Kids on the Block song just to mess with her. But anyway, I guess that's it for episode 6. We'll see everyone again next week with an all new haunting.